We recently traveled to New York City to observe the International Summit on the Teaching Profession. Countries from all over the world with successful school systems come together to share ideas with each other. At the summit, I had a chance to sit down and talk with some of the brightest minds in education today. Ron, thank you for sitting with us.
Happy to be here.
There was a summit last year, the first year, and at the end of the summit, they published a paper that had 5 points, and the one that it came down to at the end, where there was conflict, was around teaching, and it has to do with teacher evaluation.
Yes. Oh, this is hard, and we've been talking about it again this morning. This conversation is going on across the globe, which is very exciting, I think, for the United States. And before I get into your answer, we have to praise this administration for finally getting involved in the international conversation about education. We've never done it in this country before. We've always stayed aside from it. The other countries have been meeting for years, and now we finally are part of that conversation, which I think is very positive for us. So, teacher evaluation. Every teacher knows that they make a difference in how a child learns. They wouldn't come to work every day if they didn't believe that. So the challenge is, how do you assess what they do and whether they're achieving that success with kids? What everyone objects to in the profession is you can't tell whether I'm doing a good job based on the score of a single test. What a child does on a single day, on a single test, does not reflect what the child is learning. It doesn't do justice to the child's learning, first of all, and it doesn't do justice to what the teacher is doing to try to move that learning forward. And so we're all looking for ways to capture that so that it's meaningful, so we know when teachers are doing well. Everyone that I know who's an adult in their job, the one skill that they learned in school that they never use again is how to take a bubble test. I mean, nobody does that. I've never gone to work and had my boss say, fill out this form today, and that's where we're going to tell whether you succeeded or not. Every job I've ever had required hitting a certain goal, and people didn't tell me how to get to that goal. They were clear on the goal. If they were good, they were clear on the goal, and it was up to me to get there. And I could use my skills, I could use my colleagues, collaborate with others to get there.
We're a big country. We're an important country. What will other countries take away from the United States from this summit?
Well, the first thing, the other countries, even though most of the countries here outperform us on OECD's PISA, which is how they're here.
PISA is?
PISA is the program for international student achievement. So based on those scores, these countries outperform us. And these are pretty interesting tests. They don't measure against a narrow range of outcomes. So I think it's interesting for the world to see that the United States is finally participating in this and that we care, because our reputation worldwide is that we are the most creative country on earth. And everyone comes here to learn about what we are creating. Then they take it back and they do with it what they will. So I think the other countries have really appreciated that the United States is now at the table with them. I think the real learning, though, has to take place in the U.S. When we listen to the various ways these other countries are achieving the success they're achieving, we cannot continue to follow the policies that have been promoted over the last 10 years in education, because they are 180 degrees off of what the high-performing countries are doing.
What would be the number one priority?
The number one priority for me would be to stop setting up all of our systems so that they are punitive, so they are about compliance. That's not what school is. If you're going to measure teachers based on how you think, according to a test, how students are achieving, teachers will naturally not want to go into the lowest performing schools. They will not want to go and teach the highest risk children, because they know they're not going to get the results, and therefore they're likely to lose their job. In China, when they have a low-performing school, they go to a high-performing school, they take the principal and some members of the principal's team, and their reward is to go and take over a low-performing school. The culture says, oh my goodness, look who these people are. They are so good that our government is putting them in this harder situation. So they are rewarded for excellence, and their reward is helping people who are less fortunate and bringing them up. That's not what happens in the United States.
We can learn, huh?
We can.
Ron, thank you. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust. Having heard so much about Finland's successes in public education, I had a chance to sit and talk with Tapio Kosunen from the Ministry of Education in Finland. Why is education in Finland so successful? What's the real answer?
The real answer is that education is very much appreciated in Finland.
Appreciated?
Yes.
By the general public?
By the general public, yes. And we see it as means to get a decent life, well-being, and also to climb the social ladder.
So you're not so much concerned with the, I gather, if I'm hearing you correctly, not so much with scores and statistics, but more as a total human being.
Yes, that's the point. So we don't use any standardized tests in Finland.
Would you say that again out loud?
Yes.
We don't use
any standardized tests in Finland. Actually, we have one and only standardized test, which is the matriculation examination, which is after upper secondary school.
So toward the end of their time in
yes,
secondary
yes,
school.
Yes.
So I gather that tests are not important as well as rankings are not important. And
No.
Rankings are not important. And I gather competition is not important. Like school against school, or system against system.
No.
No again.
No again, because you know if you make the comparison between OECD countries, so the differences between schools are the smallest one in Finland, and so we tend to think that every school has to be a quality school with quality teachers, and for example, if you as a parent want your children go to school or child go to school, so it's the nearest one. It's natural because the differences between the quality is so low.
I gather from my reading that whether people are citizens of the country, immigrants, whether they're poor, whether they might be youngsters with some kind of disability, all treated the same, all tried to mainstream them in the same classroom.
Yes, and it's free for them, of course, because we want to educate every citizen.
But let's take a youngster who whatever the reasons might be, behavioral problems, or I guess when I was coming up, they might call them slow learners, or kids who have some kind of a disability. There is a phrase that I gather in Finland, which is whatever it takes, that whatever it takes to bring this child along is what we do.
Yes, something about that, I would say, because the pupils they have quite a lot of support services, which have to do. They got free meals, they got psychological services, they get health care, and actually every child with, for example, learning disabilities gets help to the problem.
Again, within this kind of mainstreaming everyone and people all working together, huh?
Yes, yes.
What's the attitude in Finland toward kids playing?
Playing.
Playing at school.
Well,
Do they take breaks and get outside and run around? And
yes, actually, the length of an hour or lesson is about 45 minutes usually, and then they have a break.
a lesson and then a break?
Yes.
How often does that happen during the course of the day?
Well, after every lesson, or if the teacher wants to.
After every lesson, there's a break.
Yes.
Oh, I love it so far. What do you make, just off the beaten track of some questions that I have in my mind, what do you make with the obsession in America with tests?
Well, we don't use tests because we don't believe in them. I mean, the evaluation or assessment is a bit different. It's based on a different ground. So, what we want to is that the child learns. So the support services and the teaching is important that way, that it enhances learning. And the same way, the school leaders, principals, they support the teachers, but they support also the learning of the child. So it's very important. It works like this.
And I gather very early on the kids are being exposed to music and the arts and religion and so on and so forth. Huh? That's all part of really early schooling, huh?
Oh yes. So we start the school in the year when the child is 7 years old, or his 7th birthday. And well, the curriculum consists of several subjects, of course. So that's how it goes with arts too.
How are teachers respected there in Finland?
Well, teachers are very highly respected. It's one teacher's profession is one of the 5 most popular professions in Finland.
One of the 5 most popular?
Yes, like doctors, lawyers.
Whoa, are they well paid?
Reasonably.
Reasonably well paid?
Yes. You know, every teacher in Finland studies at the university. And studies, so it's a question of a master's degree, 5 years.
They have to have a master's.
They have to have a master's degree.
They have to have a master's degree to be in the classroom.
Yes, permanently. Yes, that's true.
So the standard is set very high.
It is because we think that we need professionals with skills, real skills, and then we can trust on them.
You can trust them.
Yes, that's important. So,
trust, yeah. What can America learn from you?
Well, America has chosen maybe another way to improve education, with a way which consists of using tests and differentiating of teachers' salaries and so on. So there are quite many aspects which are different from the Scandinavian way of thinking or the Finnish way of thinking. But I'm not sure what America would learn from us. I hope something.
I gather from what I'm hearing from people that we are learning a great deal, and that I just had a conversation with our Secretary of Education, and I feel a shift coming on.
Okay, that's interesting.
We thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for the education at home and abroad.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke with Cheryl Williams. She's the executive director of the Learning First Alliance about some of the teaching issues we're dealing with right here in America. What are you going to take away from this summit meeting from other countries that we can learn, and what are we contributing to educating other countries?
Well, I don't.
What are we doing right? What should we be learning?
Well, I mean, interestingly, what we should be learning is the wisdom of these other countries. The conversation I just left was around early learning, and countries that are really investing a lot in 1- and 2-year-olds and nursery learning, play and learning, and figuring out We know brain
Because education is not just a bunch of facts, is it? It's
No.
socializing, it's
Well, there's
the
a
human
real
being.
emphasis on a lot of these countries, both the Asian countries and the European and Scandinavian countries, around educating for values and citizenship and civic responsibility. Those are things that our standardized tests don't even come close to, and yet we measure ourselves by. I mean, it's important that children know how to read and compute. I mean, we know that.
Yes.
But it's important that all of us also, understand personal responsibility, civic responsibility, and what it means to be a citizen in a democracy. And I think we can learn a lot from that. Now, one of the things that the United States is still, I would say, the best at internationally is producing innovators or outliers or people who question. And I think if we can integrate more of that into what we say we want from our students in our public schools, if we could figure out, where is our strength? I mean, people still want to come here.
Yes,
we know that.
they do. Let me head toward the finish line and put
Okay.
3 T's on the table. Teacher evaluation, teaching to the test, turning around troubled schools. Those are 3 areas that come up over and over and over again in the public discourse.
Well, let me start with the one that for me is the simplest, the teaching to the test problem. And actually, it's the one place, I'm a former junior high school and high school English language arts teacher. And I didn't teach long enough, and I didn't teach when they were, actually, if I were being judged by my students' standardized test scores, I probably would have gotten, an A, because I taught in a very affluent public school system where everybody sent their kids to public schools, and they did really well on tests, regardless of the quality of the teacher. So that, when we get to the teacher evaluation piece. But I've been disappointed in the education community talking about teaching to the test, because I think if you're teaching kids really well, they'll do well on the test. That if you're, the comment that's been made by some educators, not all, that has really disappointed me is, well, we can't teach social studies because we're too busy teaching reading. Well, I got news for you. You can't really teach social studies unless kids are reading. So, I mean, there's all kinds of cross-curricular things that you can do. So that's, I think teaching to the test should be off the table. It should be good teaching, and the tests will follow. Teacher evaluations, we just had, Ben Levin said something very interesting in there, that we don't have any professions that are paid for performance except salespeople, because you can measure it. There is no other profession which people are compensated based on performance, but that's measured by numbers. So I think teacher evaluations, the evaluation part should be part of the collaborative leadership that helps teachers get better. If we believe all kids can learn, we ought to believe that all teachers can get better if they're given the right support and the right help. And if they can't, then they need to be counseled into a profession where they can succeed.
And the third point,
Okay.
turning around the troubled
Turning around
schools?
troubled schools is very much a community activity. And frequently, it's not a matter of coming in and firing every professional in the building, but frequently you need new leadership. It's just, there's not one answer to a turned around school, except it's a community responsibility. And the community, how you define the community, if the immediate community is poor and disenfranchised, then you've got to widen that community and get more people to care about this and pay attention to it.
Last thought, when a youngster graduates from high school and they've been in school for 12 years now, what do you want that youngster to have a takeaway from that school experience?
Well, after 12 years, I want a young person to have an idea, if he or she doesn't know what they want to do or what work they want to do, to at least have a place to go and be interested in a place to go to continue that exploration, whether it's a community college, whether it's a 4-year institution, whether it's an apprenticeship. I was just at a school called the Tribeca Flashpoint Academy in Chicago, and they're taking these kids and teaching them how to do digital production and with this kind of work, and in 2 years they come out and they all get jobs. So just so they know what they don't know and they want to keep exploring.
Terrific. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I think we have also seen
To learn more about teacher unions abroad, I spoke with the federal president of the Australian Education Union. How would you judge the level of success of the summit?
Well, I think it's been highly successful, bringing together the ministers and the union leaders from 24 countries to engage in a deep conversation about how we can improve education. It's great.
Uh-huh. So what can we learn from each other? Or can we learn from each other, really?
I think so, absolutely. I think it reflects arrogance to suggest that we can't learn from each other. We're talking about countries that represent what we call high-performing countries and rapidly improving countries in attendance at this summit. And we can all learn from each other. I don't think anyone can suggest that we've got the policy mix right in any one country. And therefore, we challenge each other, and through that challenge, we learn.
Let me learn from you, and let our viewers learn from you. Back home, does the government set the standard as far as education is concerned?
The government sets policy directions, and so it should. But ultimately, where the challenge exists, even in Australia, is the extent to which the government entrusts teachers to perform our task in our classrooms every single day. What we learn from the high-performing countries, Finland, Ontario, Shanghai, Hong Kong, is that there's a great deal of trust in teachers. And through that trust, there's a great deal of professional autonomy in order to conduct teaching and learning in our classrooms. The countries that aren't performing as well tend to micromanage a lot more what happens in a classroom.
Ah, so there's a kind of a possessiveness and thinking we know what's best in the classroom.
That's correct, and that's been shown not to be the case. Certainly government should set broad parameters, broad frameworks with respect to what we expect children to learn whilst at school, but thereafter devising the actual curriculum, assessing that curriculum, reporting on that curriculum. There should be a great degree of professional autonomy for teachers in order to do that. That's where teachers are at their best.
So trust is important.
Absolutely.
When thinking back home, are there unions involved in the whole umbrella of the teaching profession?
We're pretty involved. And again, what we've learnt through this summit is those high-performing countries, the unions, the representatives of teachers, are integral to their success. If you want to achieve sound educational reform, you need to engage the profession in the articulation of policy, in the development firstly, and thereafter articulation of policies. Teacher unions aren't the obstacle. In fact, they're enablers for government to ensure that profession's engaged and thereafter deliver and implement.
Do you shake your head a little bit in disbelief when you hear about the head crunch between the unions and the teaching professional leaders here in the United States?
Regrettably, it's not only here in the United States. We see that all too often, and that's highly regrettable. There's nothing to be gained through such behaviour. When we're working together collaboratively, that's when we're at our best.
The unions quite frequently are there to make sure that the environment the teachers are working in is satisfactory and improve that. Also to make sure their compensation is fair and reasonable. But this area of evaluation always seems to come in conflict, huh?
That's because of simplistic recipes for evaluation. I've yet to meet a teacher anywhere in the world that doesn't go into their classroom with one intention and one intention only, and that is to improve on what was achieved the previous day. Accountability is not something we're scared of. In fact, I don't think teachers have been more accountable at any other time in history as we are now. Parental scrutiny, political scrutiny, media scrutiny, student scrutiny. We've never been more accountable. Never been more accountable. So let's get that right. We are accountable. We accept accountability. All we say is that whilst we respect and accept our responsibility towards our students, we just want governments to accept their obligation to ensure that our classrooms are properly resourced, because ultimately there's one goal, and that is to ensure that every child reaches his or her full potential. Are there challenges that you face back home that we should know about, so we don't feel that we're the only ones? I've visited the States a number of times and visited with our sister unions, the NEA and the AFT. Yes. And sometimes we call those visits and reciprocal meetings sharing the pain, because regrettably we see in Australia the importation of some policies from the US, which we don't believe, would put us in good stead to further improve our education systems. By that I mean an overemphasis on standardised testing and an overemphasis on standardisation of curriculum. Again, what the higher performing countries are telling us, more respect for the profession, more professional autonomy, and let teachers get on with the task.
So do you think that message is coming clear to both sides? Because that's crucial, isn't it?
It is, and the summit's very helpful in that regard, because when you have ministers of education from around the world, particularly from high-performing countries, and say, well, this is what our recipe for success looks like, and it stands in stark contradistinction with what you're doing in your country, it's a bit of a wake-up call for our policymakers. It enables them, it challenges them, and they start reflecting on their own policy. That's the success of the summit.
Thank you for visiting with us.
Thank you.
A terrific conversation.
Thank
you very much.
For information about my new book, The Chance of a Lifetime, and online video for all This Is America programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net. This is America is made possible by the National Education Association, the nation's largest advocate for children and public education. The American Federation of Teachers, a union of professionals. Punsan Corporation, forging a higher global standard. The CTC Foundation, AFO Communications, and the Rotendaro Family Trust.